Hey, welcome back again to the Football Diary podcast. It's a strange one this week because the managerial merry-go-round just keeps on moving, and it's finally taken Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as the sixth victim of the Premier League season so far, with a huge air of inevitability about it. I'll get the opinion of Dave and Myles in a moment, but first we'll just show you this, and we'll have an opinion on this as well.
I wanted us to take the next step to challenge for the league, to win trophies. I'm going to leave out the front door, and because I think everyone knows I've given everything for this club. The club means everything to me. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the results that we needed, and it's time for me to step aside. The fans have been amazing from day one at Cardiff till the last one now. So top, and we'll see each other again. I love Michael to bits. Becoming emotional now because he's top, and that's they'll be fine.
It's a weird one, isn't it, Dave? Because I mean, it's so sad to see like a legend like Solskjaer leave the club, but to see him have an exit interview is a nice touch, I think, from a United fans' point of view. But how are you feeling about this decision now, and what's your feelings towards the way Man United go next, Dave?
I think in terms of the interview itself, as Solskjaer says himself there, he wanted to say goodbye on his terms and not kind of, partake in any, interviews or make any comments kind of in the media afterwards. And, him kind of closing the door on this chapter and moving on, I suppose. Well, the way United went about it again was absolute disaster, really, to be honest. He seems like he got sacked on social media again, and all these leaks that are coming out of the club. The first kind of real news that comes out, obviously, the following morning, but by then pretty much everyone, it was all over social media late at night after the Watford game that was pretty much the final straw. So, I mean, I just don't understand how this club can't, stop these leaks, because it's been like it for years now, and it's just a bit sad, really, to see, Solskjaer, him in particular, going out this way. And you got to understand, as a person, these last few weeks must have been so painful for him, just kind of, because I know a lot of managers say, "Oh, I don't take any attention to the press or criticism or the media," but you can't avoid it. It's everywhere. And I feel as though the club are basically throwing him under the bus, really. The same coaches are still at the club. I kind of get that, we've got a couple of games coming up, but it's the club's fault for not getting a manager in when they had the chance to in the international break. The signs have been there for weeks now, and fans have been asking for a change. Like I say, it's never nice to ask for the sacking of a club legend, but it's been clear to see that there was definitely a change needed.
Yeah, I think so. The Watford game was a massive nail in the coffin, really. It was a terrible, terrible game to go out on. But Myles, your take on the video as well, and the whole situation at United now and Solskjaer's exit. How, as an outsider, do you see the way it's gone?
It's laughable, really, in terms of the way that a club of the stature of Man United have dealt with it. You have to empathise with Solskjaer, the human being, first, and understand that, obviously, because the club means so much to him having that avenue to express himself was obviously important to him as well as the fan base. I think it's a bit of a joke, if I'm honest. I've never, ever seen that before. A manager relieved of his position and the club think, right, we'll let him do the statement. It just felt, again, like United just kind of throwing him under the bus once more, like for one last time. Like, okay, rather than let the chairman or let Woodward come out and discuss the decision, we'll let Solskjaer do it. And that's why he had the job for as long as he did, because he was there to take the flack of the board and to just be the face of this absolute disaster. The Watford game is not the game that cost him his job. It's been a succession of poor results. So why he was even given that game when you've just had an international break is beyond me. And now Man United find themselves in a position where they're trying to replace a manager when there is no manager there to replace him. I can't understand what thinking has gone into this decision. If Solskjaer had beaten Watford, a side who are going to be battling relegation this season, if we're honest, was that enough to tell the board that he should have stayed in the job?
He would have stayed in.
No, probably not. So why give him the game and the opportunity to lose it? Just make the decision at a more relevant time. Because what's happened really with Solskjaer his entire time is he has done some good things at the club. It's there to see. He's helped some of the younger players develop. He brought back a much better philosophy of football in terms of he does play some quite attacking football at times. He's brought back the fans in terms of the culture of the club. And that's a wonderful thing to have achieved. However, he was always inept in terms of his tactical approach. And that's not good enough for a club of Man United's size. And at every stage when Man United could have brought the right person in, they waited. They could have brought Pochettino in before he went to PSG. They waited. They could have brought Conte in recently. They waited. They could have made this change before the international break. And all of a sudden, you've got nearly a 2-week window to bring someone in or have discussions to bring someone in. They deal with the Watford game, but also the very difficult fixtures Man United and important fixtures Man United have got coming up. And they've still not done that. And now they're delaying the decision even more. The talk is they're going to bring in an interim in the interim. To then bring in an interim before what? Like, why have you given Carrick the next few games? Was Carrick not part of the exact same problem that's been going on for the last however long? If you listen to anyone talk about it, Solskjaer is just there to smile and Carrick's been the one that's doing the tactics. All right, well, I'll look forward to seeing how he gets on this week then. It's bizarre. Yeah. And then you've got over half the season left and they're planning for next season instead of this one still. That's such a small club mentality. Yeah. United could comfortably find themselves out of the top 4 this season.
Yeah, I think the board's almost written it off, haven't they?
It's bizarre. It's such an odd decision. They wrote this season off by not sacking Solskjaer a few weeks ago. But now they're saying, okay, we'll wait and we'll get Pochettino in the summer. You could have had Pochettino a year ago. So what's changed? Absolutely nothing. It's just been bad decision after bad decision. And poor Solskjaer's the scapegoat of it all.
Yes, I think it's difficult to know where to direct your anger. I know we shouldn't take our focus as United fans away from the board and the Glazers because they're the architects of this. But I mean, the last few months, the last couple of months especially, the players have just not turned up either. And you can talk about tactics all you like, but that display from Harry Maguire against Watford was shambolic. He deserves to have the armband stripped off him straight away. He's been like that for a while, to be honest, and he should be taking the captaincy off him because he's the biggest disgrace out of the lot. But there's a few there, really. The only ones that really, against Watford, did anything to make themselves look better was arguably Donny van der Beek, who came on at half-time and changed the game. Jadon Sancho, I thought, was a real threat as well. And David De Gea, and they're the only three, really, that seem to come out of this with any credit. So where are you directing your anger, Dave, to be honest?
Well, you've already mentioned it. The clubs from, the very top, it's just completely all over the place and there's no direction. How can you, it was almost, and that's why I laughed a minute ago when you said if he'd beat Watford, I think he'd still be in the job because we're waiting, bored, I think, we're waiting for a game for us to, win a game and then all of a sudden, everything's fine, they've turned it around and, all this positive rubbish and propaganda that they put on their social media account, everything's brilliant and it's all about we're playing the United way and it's just painful to, to go through.
But that message can't keep going when you then have De Gea coming out in his interview talking about how it was one of the most difficult times of being a Man United player and how embarrassed he was of his own team's performance, talking about how inept they were tactically, which is a clear dig at the coach. You see Bruno having to plead that fans aren't blaming the manager for it. Like, if your players are then coming out and fueling a different narrative to what the board are trying to fuel, as fans, you must have found that bizarre over the weekend, sure.
I think that's something you can't control is how long the players are going to put up with it for, I suppose. And the way you mentioned the away fans there, we've got the best away fans in the league, and for them to turn on the manager, that's saying not really. I think in terms of where do we go now, I think there's rumours today that Pochettino isn't happy at PSG, and he might even potentially be looking to leave midway through the season.
I think that's what they need to do. This whole interim into an interim is ridiculous, and looking towards the end of this season into the summer as the full-time head coach being the replacement is ridiculous.
If we are going to do that, it needs to be a sustainable model. It needs to be somebody like, there's been talk of Ralph Rangnick and potentially him coming in, but he wants a director of football role after, which makes too much sense because we're just at the very top. So that would be ideal for me, really. And if we are looking at the end of the season, then because apparently Ten Hag still wants to finish the season and he will be interested in the United job, I think for me, Ten Hag, I think is probably my number one choice.
100%.
Just for what he's done at Ajax, and I feel as though he'll be the one next to come off, the conveyor belt as the next big manager after potentially. I could see Man City ironing up if Pep was to leave in the next couple of years. The kind of football that he plays is, mesmerizing, really. So they need to do something. They need to act, and
Yeah, I think you're right, though. It makes a statement going into another club mid-season and taking their manager. I think that kind of says, we mean business instead of this nonsense about waiting for an interim and then waiting for the summer. That just doesn't make any sense at all, really, for a club like United. Like you say, Miles, writing off the season pretty much. But I mean, what kind of identity are we looking for? That's the thing that's been lacking under Solskjaer, is any kind of identity, any kind of way of playing. What kind of manager do you think, Miles, would take this team of players and go, I can put this identity on them?
Well, that's why United's structure is so poor and why that director of football is clearly missing. Because look at the last 4 appointments. You couldn't get 4 more different coaches. So when you say, who's the coach with Man United's identity right now? I ain't got a clue, because United don't have a clue. They don't have an identity, really. They tried to push their identity as nostalgia for the last 3 years, and that just doesn't work. I think the thing is, any top quality coach can get something out of this group of players. It is a phenomenal group of players on their day. Now, there are definitely holes in that squad. We know that. We know the midfield's not strong enough. I still think centre-back is an issue, particularly while Varane's out injured. It looks like full-back might need addressing in some way. But I do think if you get a coach in with actual experience and tactical nous, then they'd be able to get more out of these players than they're currently getting. The one that's really bothering me, and I'd love to see what you two think about this as United fans, there is a huge narrative around Ronaldo right now, and talking about him like he's the problem. Like, bringing Ronaldo in has ruined Man United's football. They can't play fast counter-attacking football with Ronaldo. He doesn't track back. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. And the next manager will have to deal with Ronaldo's... I'm sorry. Are we talking about the same player here? Because to me, I watch Ronaldo and I see someone who has saved Ole Gunnar Solskjaer about 5 times, would be perfectly capable of playing the same sort of football. He might be 36, but he's still got pace. So you can still break, but instead you've got a lethal finisher on the break. He does actually have a lot more work ethic than I think anyone realizes. That's how he's become the athlete he has. And with someone telling him, this is where you press, this is a coherent team who are going to press with you, I don't doubt that he's capable of that too. Look at what Zidane got out of him when he managed his game time. All right, he's a couple of years younger then. But Zidane said to him, right, I don't need you in this game right now. We're going to save that. We're going to use it here. And used his squad. A good manager will do that properly. Ronaldo, to me, is not the biggest problem that the next manager will have. He's the biggest weapon the next manager will have. So no one seems to know where to channel their anger at Man United right now. It's bizarre.
Which is great for the board because it means they deflect so much of it. Yeah. But Ronaldo isn't the problem. You're right. I think he created a puzzle that Solskjaer just couldn't solve because I think he had his mind set on Greenwood, Rashford and Sancho as his front three. And then Ronaldo became available. The board insist on signing him and suddenly he's got to try and include him. And I think it takes a big manager to kind of drop someone like Ronaldo. I don't think Solskjaer was that coach, to be fair. I don't think he had the guts to be able to do that.
It's not about dropping. It's about managing his game time. That's what people don't seem to get with Ronaldo. For some reason, there is this thought that, oh, well, Ronaldo was undermining Solskjaer. What's the evidence of that?
No.
The only thing you're basing that off is the fact that he's a big character. There is nothing to suggest that he's actually been doing that while he's at Man United. He's there and he's scored more goals than anyone else for United this season. I think he's scored half of United's goals already, hasn't he? Yeah. That's not a problem. It was an opportunistic signing. It wasn't a signing United needed, but that doesn't mean you can't make it work. It's not Ronaldo's fault you don't have a holding midfielder. It's bizarre.
Yeah, there's so many people blaming different people for different things. And I just think as United fans, we need to keep it squarely on the board and sort of look at what happens next. This is probably the biggest appointment United have made since Fergie left, because the club is in a decent place player-wise. You know, the pieces are there. It's just making them work together. So whoever we appoint next will be a clear indication of what direction the board wants to go. I've got to say, I'm not confident they'll get it right. I'm really not. Talking to Steve Bruce coming in on an interim role, like...
No. No one is talking about Steve Bruce coming in except for Steve Bruce. Probably, the headline I read was, Steve Bruce would be very keen on Man United job. Yeah, me too, mate. Me too. Get in line.
You're laughing, Miles, but I mean, I'm not ruling anything out with this board. They could do that as another nostalgia fix, couldn't they?
All right, Paul Ince could come in then if you like. He had a good managerial career, didn't he?
Yeah. But in terms of like managerial appointments, Dave, who's your preference then? You're saying Ten Hag long term and maybe Rangnick short term. It all sounds very sensible. I mean, what's the likelihood?
I think they're the two names that jump out really. Ten Hag and Pochettino that will potentially be available. Obviously, there's rumours that Zidane isn't interested. And I always thought that was probably a little bit unlikely. And to be honest, I don't know whether I could actually see Zidane at United.
No. I don't think I'd have him. Why? A bit like Conte, it just wouldn't work.
Why?
He doesn't speak English for a start. And I think he's hanging on for either the France job or the PSG job. If
his agent came out and said that he's not interested in managing in England for whatever reason. I feel that's a bit strange.
That's you're Man United. Do you know what I mean? Would Man City accept that answer right now? No, they'd go out and get the right manager. And now you've got someone in Zidane who inevitably would sort the midfield out because he had a very, very strong midfield at Real Madrid. You got Casemiro playing out of his skin there and improved him massively. He'd definitely get the best out of someone like Paul Pogba. He's managed Ronaldo before. He'd go in and command respect straight away. And this is a guy who has won trophies. Solskjaer's problem was, he was a motivator in some ways. Yeah, you could respect him and his playing career, but he couldn't get the job done at the important times. You lost the Europa League final. You lost these semi-finals. Zidane's a serial winner already. So to me, he is the obvious candidate right now. Even Pochettino, he's won one French League Cup, or the equivalent of the French.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think it seems as though the board have placed this importance of, the United way, whatever that is. Apparently, there's quotes coming out today that they want the manager to play in the United way and promote the development of youth, which both Pochettino and Ten Hag do. So I think they're probably earmarked as the two potential, candidates for the job. So, I mean, we'll wait and see what happens. But I'm a bit hesitant, really, to wait until the summer to figure out sort of, what's happening. Unless we actually get a competent, interim in, which is, is probably unlikely.
Who's going to take it on an interim basis that's competent?
Steve Bruce.
Exactly. That's the level you're looking at if you're looking at just one season. Or Rangnick is because apparently that's what he wants, but they won't do that. Dave's right. It's too much of a good idea.
There's talk of Laurent Blanc as well, wasn't there? Because he's sounding it out, but he's been out of the European game for so many years. I don't know if he'd be able to hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
There's a Sky headline that came out that's saying Rooney would find it hard to turn down if it was offered.
Flipping out from one basket case to another if you're Rooney. The other one is Ferdinand's trying to talk himself into the director of football job apparently as well. So you'll have someone else underqualified to do something.
I don't know who's creating these kind of speculative stories though. Is it the board kind of sounding these people out, or are people just trying to just rip the team apart because
people are leaking that Solskjaer is going to be sacked? And apparently the news that you were going to hire an interim manager and Carrick was going to be an interim was happening while the board were meeting still. So how is that? Someone sat in the boardroom tweeting it in the meantime. Like, it's ridiculous.
Seems that way. Anyway, moving swiftly on because the United situation could rumble on. We'll keep a close eye on this. Got them.
Well done, Watford, though.
Watford, yeah. Do you know what? With the spine of a team of United rejects that weren't good enough. So just kind of says it all, really, doesn't it?
They played well,
good performance, yeah. And Ranieri's actually turning a bit of a corner there, isn't he? So, yeah, good job. Moving on swiftly to Villa Park, Myles, and this. A good game to be back in football for. It's your first live game for a while, isn't it, from what I can hear? So, how was it?
It was incredible. It was so brilliant to be back at Villa Park. I haven't been since lockdown. So to be there and to be there for Gerrard's first game. I also got to take my wife with me. So it was the first time she'd ever been to Villa Park, and that was really nice. And we had the best time. And the fact we got the result in the end really helped. But yeah, it was a sellout crowd. I think it was 42,000 in the end. And you felt every one of them for a while. The atmosphere was absolutely fantastic. I think there was some nerves going into it on how they would receive the team after Smith had gone. But they were chanting Gerrard's name immediately, which was weird to hear. Very, very weird to hear, I'll be honest. Yeah. But yeah, brilliant atmosphere. And it was great to be back.
From what I could tell, it was set up in like a 4-3-3 formation. I was trying to figure out what he was playing and what the difference between Smith and himself would be. Yeah. What kind of noticeable changes did you see in the playing style from the Gerrard era so far?
Good question. Nothing to start with, I will say. The first 80 minutes, we were very, very passive. Controlled what we needed to, but I think Brighton made it easy for us. People have talked about Brighton a lot and how they look very good on the ball. They seem to be a good unit. They're well set up, but they don't really have that much end product. That was exactly what I saw. Brighton held possession at times, moved the ball quite quickly, but they only really had 2 attempts on goal that I can remember. And Emi Martinez dealt with them pretty comfortably. Villa, they seemed to be very comfortable at just starting again and recycling play and trying to hold on to the ball when they had it. But they lacked a lot of intensity. It looked like first game back after international break, definitely. A lot of players seemed unfit. There were a lot of players you could tell haven't trained very much with Gerrard yet. I think that they started the likes of McGinn, who had obviously been away. Bailey was on the bench and he'd been away. Martinez had been away. Mings had been away. And that showed. And a few players still don't really look that fit. Like Buendia just doesn't look 100% fit still. So the intensity was kind of missing. We weren't pressing it the way that we could. Or when one player moved forward, there was a lot of passengers and a lot of people stood quite still. But to Gerrard's credit, then he made 3 substitutions that completely changed the game. He clearly targeted one side of Brighton. So Tariq Lamptey picked up a yellow card and I think he went off after a while, actually. And they decided that was the avenue they were going to attack. So at one point, they brought on Ashley Young, who was absolutely fantastic when he came on. He played so well. They brought on El Ghazi and they brought on Bailey. And then they moved Watkins into the middle, but he kind of supported on the left. So all the play went through the left-hand side. And all of a sudden you had Target, Young, Watkins and El Ghazi all storming one wing and overloading Brighton. And that's where the first goal came from. It was really, really clever play. They had this quick counter-attack where Ashley Young picks the ball up and plays a brilliant pass. And you could hear the crowd getting a bit on edge there, begging Watkins to pass the ball. And he just took on the entire Brighton defence and finished it brilliantly. So it was nice to see the impact of Gerrard's changes, because the fact that he made that decision and it got us a really good result. Because let's not forget Brighton. They started the season really well. They're on a bit of an indifferent run now, but they really did start this season looking like a good side. So to win the game based on your substitutes' performances, it's a great start for Gerrard, and he'll be really happy. I mean, you saw him celebrating on the touchline. He was clearly ecstatic. So I don't know what Gerrard's Villa looks like yet. I don't think he does either. But it was good to just get that win, get the monkey off your back as well, get that new manager bounce. All of a sudden, we're not on a losing streak. So that's a really, really important stage. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, very early days, obviously. But I think I could see almost like an aura around Gerrard. And I think the media felt that, definitely. I think he attracts attention because of his reputation in the Premier League. I'm sure the players must feel some kind of like, wow, that's Steven Gerrard. And when I've heard Rangers fans speak about his style, it's more that he's got a tactical sort of flexibility when he does recognise something's not going right. And I think the difference between Rangers in domestic league and in Europe was quite noticeable as well. When they played superior opposition, they set up quite differently. So he seems like a tuned in, intelligent kind of coach, really, which is a positive sign.
Yeah, and you can already tell the players that were going to respond well to him. So I'm thinking of that midfield. Obviously, the midfield is the ones that are going to have a lot to learn from someone like Steven Gerrard, of course. Yeah. And I remember when we first signed John McGinn, a lot of the comparisons to the way he played were like Steven Gerrard. So it'd be interesting to see whether he can help him move on to that next sort of level. I look at someone like Jacob Ramsey, who he was a lot better actually in this game, I thought, because he wasn't afraid to take people on. He seemed a bit more progressive. He's still kind of lacking that end product, but an academy midfielder coming through at his hometown club, who better to talk him through that scenario than someone like Steven Gerrard? So there are definitely people that can excel. You can see who his guys are going to be as well, because he brought Ashley Young on to change the game, and it worked. I heard today that the talk was he trained so well that there was talk that he was going to start as a number 10, Ashley Young. He's been playing that well in training. So I think he'll have a big role. And Gerrard did say that Mings and McGinn are under a trial period as captains still. So maybe Young's being considered for that. But I will say, Tyrone Mings was absolutely fantastic. He didn't put a foot wrong. He defended really well. He led the back line really well. His passing was brilliant. And then he popped up at the end with a great goal. When you think that you're 1-0 up, it's the later stages of the game, you might just want to hold on to the ball. He slides in to keep the ball in play and try and keep an attack alive, and then follows it up. Your centre-back arriving late in the box to get a rebound on his weak foot. It's not really what you expect, but it clearly meant a lot to him to be there and leading the team that day. And yeah, he was fantastic. So Gerrard can definitely get a lot out of a lot of those players because it's a good squad. It really is. I wonder where certain players are going to fit into his plans, though. And I think there will be a bit of a shuffle around in January.
Yeah, that's never a bad thing, though, is it really? I think there's still a few players that we haven't really seen much of. I mean, Leon Bailey, you do think, where's he going to fit as well?
He looked great when he came on, though. He came on. He's still not 100% fit, but he looked brilliant. He was really dynamic. He was moving the ball forward again. He probably should have scored at one point as well, but it would have been a great goal if he had. He had this volley that he took brilliantly, but hit straight at the keeper. But there is a lot of potential in that team. The one worry I have is they still don't seem to know how to play Ings and Watkins together. It was only when Ings went off that we kind of kicked on. And that's not his fault necessarily. I'm not saying he played poorly, but they don't look like they're linking that well.
It's a nice headache to have, though, because, I mean, on their day, they're all fantastic players, the forward line, aren't they? It's just chemistry and getting the balance right, isn't it? So, 100%. Like you said, a talented squad. Dave, from the outsider looking in again, what do you make of a Steven Gerrard Villa team? I don't know how much of the game you actually saw, but strange to see him in the Villa Park dugout, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an unusual one, to say the least. I think it's I won't say risky appointment, but I'd say I can see him doing quite well there. When I did see him manage for Rangers, as you said there, he did set up differently at times, and he did approach and did actually quite well in Europe against some of the big teams with a club the size, with the quality that Rangers have. I think that's saying quite a lot. He's brought Rangers back from kind of, a long period of chasing Celtic and looking to kind of overthrow them off the top of the league. And he's managed to do that. And, he's been successful and won the league with Rangers. And I feel like he's a manager with a lot of promise. And there's a lot of talk about whether this is a stepping stone for Liverpool. I think that's so premature and a bit disrespectful.
I get the feeling with him, though, he's too close to Liverpool to actually take them on as manager. I feel like he would feel that was too big a connection to sort of risk jeopardising it in some way. I don't know if you feel the same.
I don't think he can afford to do that, though. We've seen that in the past with, certain United players and
Lampard,
Steve Bruce.
Yeah.
There's many former United players that are now managers and have come up against United and, you know, have got results against it. So I think he'll look past that. You know, he's always looking to further improve himself, and he's only got his eyes on Aston Villa at the minute. And I feel that in terms of the game, I agree with Myles. There was I think little to take from it. There was little things that you could see. I think one thing for me is they're still trying to figure out how that team plays, and I feel as though that's the conundrum that Dean Smith had. He was in a pickle where he kind of was looking for a solution, and it was harsh to sack him. That's all I can say. I know we've obviously already discussed this, but Brighton didn't play too bad. They had 2 or 3 really good chances in that first half. As Myles said, they're just lacking that final product. They did have it at the start of the season. You saw the likes of, you know, Welbeck and Mopé actually finishing chances, but they seem to have hit a little bit of a brick wall at the minute where they're struggling to convert.
Well, on that though, what was interesting was Potter brought Mopé on right towards the end, and it was just completely the wrong decision. Brighton were pretty in control until he did that, and all of a sudden it just opened them up massively, and that's when Villa got them on the counter attack. So it was really interesting that Potter's been really hailed as a really good coach this year, someone that a lot of Villa fans probably would have been calling out for, because he's actually a Villa fan as well. And both managers made changes to affect the game in very different ways, and that was really encouraging. Before we move on from Villa, one thing I just wanted to say as well was the experience of going back to live football after lockdown was such a weird thought to go through in the first place, because obviously being in big crowds and things still feels a bit surreal. But the whole talk of we can't put Saturday 3 o'clock games on TV because people won't go to the ground has to be nonsense, because I cannot express how wonderful the feeling of being back in Villa Park was. To go, particularly, I think, to be going on a big occasion when it's Gerrard's first game, to see us win, to take my wife and have her there with Danks on the back of a Villa shirt, like that means so much to me as a fan. And there are 42,000 other people there with another story that they could tell about being in the ground that day. And I realised then that as difficult as the world has become over the last 18 months, and we've kind of had football as a bit of a release, in person like that, and people being able to invest in their club around a community of people who care about just the same thing. There is no other experience like that. You can go and see a band play and there can be 1,000 people there, but you're not got anything in connection with the person stood next to you. Whereas you're at Villa Park, the amount of people that were just talking to my wife about Villa, how do you think they're going to get on today? They've never met her before, but there's a connection and assumption there of like, there's like a family atmosphere. You can't get that watching it on TV. That's in the ground. So this whole talk about whether or not we could televise 3 o'clock games at the risk of the live game, no, you'd be fine, and it should.
Yeah, it's a very old-fashioned notion, is it, to be honest? And I think that's why it's kept in place, because of tradition, basically. But good to see you back in a stadium. Looks like a great atmosphere to be back to as well. So moving on to Dean Smith next, anyway, because he got Norwich's win in his first game, which was great to see, coming back from behind to beat Southampton, the team that defeated him in his final game for Villa. So it's good to see him bounce back like that, isn't it? I'll start again with you, Myles. He's a bit like Solskjaer, really, where he's got an affinity with the club. Really nice guy. He was out of work for a week, and I think that says a lot about the man and the manager that he is, doesn't it? Yeah,
100%. I mean, I said it in my video last week or the week before, whenever it was, about how much Smith means to Villa and Villa fans, and that he is take the nostalgia out of it. The difference between him and Solskjaer is, yes, there's a connection to the club with both of them, but one of them is a very good manager, particularly at the level he was at. I think he should have got more time at Villa, but he will definitely make Norwich better. I'm not saying that it will help them survive, because that squad is really, really poor, but there are some players in there that he could definitely get a lot out of. There was a lot of talk of the fact he wanted Cantwell in the summer, and now he has Cantwell at his disposal. Rashika, Villa looked at him last year, so obviously he's someone that Smith will be aware of. And there are some decent footballers there. Billy Gilmore's obviously there, and Timu Pukki as well. So I think Smith has potential to get Norwich out of trouble, and I think he is the right man for that job right now. I think he's probably the right man for Villa's job too, but never mind that. You got to let that go. And I was just really happy for him, to be honest. They read the score out at Villa Park at the end of the game, And even though Villa are at that sort of stage in the league, you still want to cheer that result because you want Smith to do well. And the fact that he came from behind against Southampton, and obviously they were the team that pretty much lost him his dream job, that's a really good start for him. That'll build some momentum. And Norwich deserved the win, I think. I think they when they needed to, they stepped up and they took the game on. So they'll play good football now. Norwich will pass the ball a lot more. They'll break a lot more. And you'll see an actual coherent plan with them. He will definitely get them better drilled than they have been. So well done to Dean Smith is all I can say, really. And I hope he does well with them as long as it's not at Villa's expense. In a few weeks, we have Liverpool. Villa have Liverpool. And 3 days later, they have Norwich. So narrative central. Right? That's going to be an interesting week.
Oh,
Gerrard going there and then Smith coming back to us. Ooh.
You know, it feels sometimes things like that are just set up just right for the narrative, doesn't it? Amazing, quirk of the fixture list there.
You're right. For Bruce to go home.
Let's not go back there, mate. Come on. I just wanted to have a word on Smith, really, because you could see a different style of play. Well, you could see a style of play with Norwich. There was no conservatism there as such. I mean, they took a lot of pressure from Southampton at the start. They went a goal down, which, is a tough test of character in his first game. But to turn it around and, like you said, Gilmour was kind of central to that. I thought he did really well. You could see he wants him to have a platform to perform. And he raised a few eyebrows going to Norwich, I think. Gilmour, because he's clearly a talented player, and Norwich were always going to be a very conservative team. So how he fit into that was questionable, but he did. And credit to Smith really for turning the performance around like he did. It was nice to see, like you say, a win in his first game.
The only problem for Smith really this weekend was that everyone else got results too. I mean, I know Newcastle drew and Leeds lost and Burnley drew, but seeing teams above him winning games as well, you think, typical. Watford have won, Villa have won, and all of a sudden you're thinking that 3 points was more just keeping up rather than catching up. But at least they're not on the bottom of the table. That's one monkey off their back straight away.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm thinking, Dave, from a perspective of a completely impartial observer, do you think they took Smith on Norwich with a view to him going down and then coming back up again because he's done that before?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really? I think you can say that if they were to go down, he's the proof's in the pudding. He's shown that he can recover. I feel as though he's a really good appointment in terms of, they were decisive in their actions, Norwich, and they managed to get a manager in. I think for them, it was a little bit lucky how it kind of panned out because, it could have been, Villa held on a couple more weeks. Norwich could have got another manager in that, might not have been right for them at all. But I feel as though the perfect guy really to give them the best chance at least of keeping them up this season. Even if they can do that and put up a fight, I feel as though there's plenty to be optimistic about as a Norwich fan.
More than there was a couple of weeks ago, because we were talking about them being the worst Premier League side in history, weren't we? So that's changed, I think, straight away, because it looks like he's the kind of person who will get his team playing a certain brand of football that will at least, attempt to get them out of trouble. Whereas Daniel Farke was definitely not that guy, was he?
I think, I know you say, obviously, it sort of feels like they're just trying to keep up now and not gain any ground, but it's also about building momentum, and that's 2 wins on the spin now. So, they're looking at it as, as a positive, and that's something that they lacked. I think they probably lost the feeling of what it feels like to win.
Yeah.
And, that can be, getting used to losing is a dangerous, way to play. So, for them, I feel as though it's looking up, definitely. And I'm sure that fans are probably looking forward to going to games again. So
they should.
It'd be interesting to see how it plays out, because obviously at the bottom, like you say, a few teams did get results, and the likes of Watford, I'm sure they'll have been, delighted with that result against United. And if that can't kind of give you a bit of a momentum push, then what can? So it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be tight at the bottom this year.
Well, speaking of the bottom, Newcastle are now rooted after their draw, but they drew 3-3, which is not a result you'd associate with a Steve Bruce Newcastle team. So are we seeing already a change in their way of playing? Are we seeing a bit more cavalier kind of football from Eddie Howe?
I think one thing you can say about when Bournemouth were last in the Premier League under Eddie Howe, there was a lot of high score, not necessarily wins for them, but they were involved in entertaining games. And, I'm not saying, I don't want to say this prematurely, but it could be the start of, Newcastle potentially being in some more exciting games, which, let's be honest, how many have we seen over the last few years? I think, I feel as though that's what the fans probably want there as well. Like, why do you want to go to a game for them to try and hold out to narrowly gain a draw or potentially snatch a win? You want to see your team score goals, whether it be a loss, and you see your team actually attacking. I feel as though that's probably what they want for the fans as well. It's something for them to build towards, and I feel as though Eddie Howe can actually do that.
I'm less convinced, can I say?
Yeah, I think they'll play a bit more entertaining than they did, but that wasn't difficult to really achieve, was it? Really.
Partly that, and also I don't think that they were necessarily more entertaining because of any quality. I think it was a lack of quality made that game entertaining, because if you look at the goals, I think Brentford's goals, other than Tony's goal, should be saved. Really, your keeper should do better. But Rico Henry's goal was fantastic. The cross for the delivery was absolutely amazing. Other than that, everything else was quite sloppy, really. And I wonder how easy Newcastle are going to get it against better opposition. Joe Linton's not going to be scoring against a side other than a newly promoted side, really, is he? Let's be honest. And Maximin is obviously quality, but until they invest in January, there's nothing around him. Eddie Howe wasn't even there for this game as well, so we don't know exactly what an Eddie Howe Newcastle side is going to be. And in January, there's a lot of talk that the Premier League clubs are going to refuse to sell to Newcastle, which is hilarious. So we really could see Coutinho at St James's Park and Eden Hazard.
Well, that's the thing. If they don't dig themselves out of trouble anymore now, then who's going to go to Newcastle in January with the prospect of a championship season ahead of them? So, so many question marks still, really, and no clearer about their future immediately anyway. But at the top of the table, quickly before we go, Man City and Chelsea stretch further ahead with 3-0 wins against, Leicester City and Everton, respectively. But then Liverpool thumped Arsenal 4-0. So
I think Liverpool are looking sharper this year than they ever have before, even under Klopp. Our goal threat at the moment is insane. We look like we're going to score 5 or 6 goals a game. The entire front four, Mane, Salah, Firmino and Jota, have all performed really well. I think we are still prone to being exposed at the back. I think teams like West Ham, the way that they played against us, dominating physically in set pieces and countering the fullbacks. I think it's the teams that specifically try to counter our game as opposed to trying to play their natural way, because no team's doing it better than us right now. Like I said, I think the only way that teams are beating us at the moment is if they're looking at our tactics or looking at our game and trying to counter it, which is probably the biggest compliment you can get in football, when teams are looking to actively beat you at your own game or trying to find holes in your game rather than focusing on their own game and the way that they play. And any other team this season that's tried to play their own way, you've seen the way that Man United, Arsenal on the weekend tried to play their way, and we just blew them apart, which is it's been really exciting to watch, especially this year with Chelsea and Man City being dominant. I think we're looking at a very close title race, and I hope it's a close one, because it could be a really exciting season, and I think it could be any of those 3 that win. Obviously, I'm optimistic that we could deliver, but I think it's going to be a very close race, and I think Chelsea are looking the favourites.
No, it's weird, isn't it? Because when Arsenal lost a couple of big games at the start of the season, it was a real worry. But the quality of Liverpool just meant that this doesn't really surprise anyone. No one seems to care. Yeah. I think Arsenal have been on such a good run that they kind of allowed themselves this result as well, which is a good thing, really. In the course of a season, you don't want to lose 4-0, obviously, but at least they've got some credit in the bank, and they're a bit further up in the league at this stage than they were when they were losing at the start of the season. But yeah, it just showed a bit of immaturity, really. Even Arteta trying to clash with Klopp on the touchline, just it just spurred Liverpool on more than anything. And I thought it was really interesting that Ramsdale has come in and been so instrumental in sorting Arsenal's defence out. And he made some phenomenal saves. Now, I've been told I'm not allowed to talk about the second goal by any Arsenal fans, because apparently he couldn't have done better for that, even though he dived 5 seconds before Jota shot. But I do think that for each of the others, I wonder how much closer he could have got, particularly the first one he should keep out. So it was just Arsenal in a nutshell, really, where there are things that they do that look brilliant, but then when they don't do the brilliant, it's a calamity. For example, Tavares passing the ball straight to a Liverpool attacking player. Come on, you can't.
Why was Tavares even on the pitch? When Tierney was fully fit, why was he not playing?
He's doing well, to be fair, Tavares, on a regular basis. So it is interesting seeing those two competing for left back, because I think everyone just assumed he would either come in, fill in at right back when needed, and compete with Tierney every now and again, or provide injury cover. But he's done really well. Him and Lokonga were kind of the two that were signed for the future, but are kind of in the now and are doing quite well. But this game wasn't the best example of either of them.
No. Dave, have you changed your opinion on the title favourites in your eyes?
I think it might be tighter than we think. I know, obviously, you two both had Chelsea as outright favourites, didn't you?
Yeah.
I went for Man City. I can still be in a three-horse race. I just don't know. It's going to be fine margins that decide it, that's for sure. But in terms of consistency and being able to get the job done, I just have a feeling it's going to be between Man City and Chelsea.
We've said it before, but the African Cup of Nations is going to be the big thing for Liverpool, how they deal with both Salah and Mane being out, and Matip, I guess. And Chelsea will lose Mendy, so they'll be relying on Kepa, the world's most expensive goalkeeper. Let's not forget. We'll see how that goes.
Well, like you say, with that kind of player in reserve, they should be quite comfortable. But no, it's Kepa at the end of the day. So but yeah, the next wave of Premier League games sees United play Chelsea actually. So pretty much a win for Chelsea in the bag, you'd imagine. The way things are going.
Do you think Carrick will be in charge for that, or do you think they'll have someone in by then?
No, I think he's got the next 2 games. So Villarreal in the week, and then I think Chelsea. I think he'll have both of those. Yeah, I don't think they've got any plan for a manager to be in place. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Do you think United are this prompt and even recruiting bloody, I don't know, pot washer these days? They'll be able to get pot washer in a week.
I saw the other day that they're advertising for someone to be one of the player liaisons and go and help them whenever they need their sink fixing or something like that. So maybe Solskjaer can go and do that so he stays with the club.
Well, we start the conversation on United and we finish it on United as well, just dominating it, aren't they? Thanks for your time,
become boring now.
It is getting a bit boring, yeah, but they seem to be literally top news every week at the minute until they slip into mediocrity, wherever that might be. Seems like it's inevitable at the minute, but anyway, I'll try and stay positive. Thank you for your time, guys. We'll speak next week, hopefully. But yeah, if you want to follow us more on YouTube, then please do hit that follow button, hit the subscribe button. That'd be amazing. But until then, thank you, guys. See you soon.